Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Crystal, I'm with IBA Life Sciences, and today I want to tell you about common problems that can occur during the purification of his-tag proteins. Then we will take a look at an alternative solution to these problems, namely IBA's proprietary StrepTag technology. Let's start by taking a closer look at the his-tag purification cycle. Before the protein can be purified, it is expressed in a cell culture. After equilibration, the cell culture lysate is applied to the purification resin. The His residues of the tag bind to the nickel ions on the resin. Host proteins that have no His residues do not bind. Unbound proteins are washed away with the buffer. His tag proteins have a higher affinity to the resin and stay bound to it. For the elution, the imidazole concentration in the buffer is raised. Imidazole displaces the His tag protein from the nickel ions. The column can then be regenerated and reused, while the eluted proteins can be used for analysis. Let's take a look at what problems can occur during each of these steps. The choice of the expression system can already influence the protein purification. E. coli is the most common system for the production of his-tag proteins, but in some cases it doesn't offer appropriate post-translational modifications, like proper glycalization. Instead, mammalia, insect or yeast cell cultures are used. These host cells have a larger number of their own proteins that have His residues, which can bind to the nickel resin and lead to impurities. To reduce the binding of these proteins, imidazole is often added to the lysis buffer, but it will also lower the binding efficiency of the his-tag proteins. If the protein is secreted into the medium, large sample volumes can cause a leakage of the protein that is already bound, as well as strip the metal ions on the column. The use of metal ions on the resin also means that not all protein classes can be purified. For example, metalloproteins cannot be purified via the his-tag, as both the tag and the absorption matrix can strip the metal ions from the proteins. During lysate application, the affinity of the target protein to the resin determines the strength of the bond between them. In his-tag proteins, it can be adjusted via the number of His residues. It is common to have between 6 and 10 His residues, via which the affinity can be adjusted. It is also possible to use different metal ions on the resin, which all come with their own benefits and drawbacks. The most common ion for his-tag purification is nickel. Nickel resins offer a relatively high yield, but also bind to many contaminating proteins. Cobalt resins provide a highly pure product, but have a very low yield. Copper resins have a very high yield, but the product contamination is even higher than with nickel resins. The contaminations can be reduced by adjusting the imidazole concentration in the buffers, but the concentration has to be optimized to the expression system and each target protein. The reagents that are used during protein purification always have an influence on protein functionality. If the protein has to be purified natively, this becomes especially important. Detergents like Chaps and Tween are often added to protein purification buffers for cell wall lysis and are generally fine to use during his-tag purification. Reducing agents are added to keep the cysteine side chains of cytoplasmatic proteins in their normal reduced state. They will also reduce the immobilized metal ions on the resin. Finding the ideal concentration that will keep the protein reduced but does not harm the resin can be a long trial and error process. Chelating agents like EDTA and EGTA are often added to inhibit protease activity. They will also bind to the metal ions on the resin that are meant to capture the his-tag proteins, and therefore cannot be used during his-tag purification. Other common buffer components like ammonium, tris, HEPAS, and MOPS are often used during the purification of pH-sensitive proteins. They contain secondary or tertiary amines that can reduce metal ions, again lowering the binding efficiency of the resin. For the elution of his-tag proteins, there are different options. A change in pH value will release the his-tag target proteins, but also any host proteins that have bound unspecifically to the resin matrix. The application of imidazole in high concentrations or chelating agents will release the his-tag proteins in a more specific way, but host proteins with exposed His residues or clustered will be released as well. If an imidazole gradient is applied, weak binding proteins are released at low imidazole concentrations, while proteins with strong binding are released later. For a precise grading application, an automated purification device is required. All the elution conditions for Histag purification are rather unspecific and can lead to a lot of contaminations of the products. This is often seen in the purity of the eluted protein. There is always a compromise between a high yield and a high purity during Histag purification, no matter what ions are used. Ideally, a resin provides a high yield and a high purity. On the right, you can see a Coomassie stained gel after a purification of two proteins with a nickel anti-A resin. As you can see, the yield of both proteins is high, but there's still a very high background of contaminating proteins. For specific analysis, the proteins would have to be purified again. Multi-step purifications often require a change in buffer conditions, which can be detrimental to the target protein. All of these factors make the Histag tricky to work with. For every new protein, the purification conditions have to be tested and adjusted several times, and even then, compromises have to be made. Using another tag, like the strep tag, can be a good alternative to using the Histag. Let's start again by taking a look at the strep tag purification cycle. On the surface, it looks very similar to the Histag purification, but as we will see later, there are far fewer factors that have to be kept in mind during strep tag purification. Again, we start with the expression of the target protein in cell culture. Once the resin has been equilibrated, the lysate is applied and the target protein binds to the ligand, in this example streptectin XT. Unbound proteins are removed during the washing step, before the target protein is competitively eluted with biotin. The column can then be regenerated and reused, and the eluted protein can be used in analysis. Like with the Histag, the protein expression can be done in E. coli or in eukaryotic cell cultures. The biotin that is used in the cell culture media for mammalia, insect or yeast cells can bind to the binding site of streptectin and inhibit the efficient binding of strep-tag proteins. The same is true for biotin-elated proteins. But there is a simple way to mask biotin and biotin-elated proteins: the addition of avidin. Avidin binds irreversibly to biotin but not to the strep-tag. With the biotin masked, it cannot inhibit the strep-tag from binding to streptectin. The application of large sample volumes is also not problematic, since unlike ions, streptectin cannot be washed off the resin. Additionally, since the strep tag is a small peptide sequence that is not common in proteins, all protein classes can be purified via the strep tag, even metalloproteins. The strep tags can simply be added to the C or N terminus of the protein during cloning. The strep tag system consists of two tags, the strep tag and the twin strep tag, and two possible ligands, streptectin and streptectin XT, resulting in four possible combinations. Both tags have different affinities to the two different ligands, with streptectin XT and the twin strep tag having the highest affinity to each other. This possibility to choose the fitting affinity for your application makes the strep tag system the ideal tool for protein purification and also other applications like immobilization and detection. When it comes to the compatible reagents, the strep tag system is far more flexible than the Histag. Not only the detergents that are compatible with the Histag can be used with strep tag, but reducing and chelating agents, as well as common buffer components, are compatible with the strep tag system. This allows the user to adjust the buffer composition to the protein's specific properties, allowing the purification of metalloproteins, proteins with cysteines, or pH-sensitive protein complexes. The elution adds another specificity-conforming step. It is achieved by adding large amounts of this thiobiotin for streptectin or biotin for streptectin XT, which bind to the binding sites on the ligands and displace the tagged proteins. Of course, biotin-elated proteins that are bound would be eluted as well, but if they have been masked with avidin before the lysate applications, this will not be an issue. Proteins that have bound unspecifically to the resin matrix will not be eluted, making the elution conditions for the strep tag very specific. Besides the high yield, the strep tag system also offers a high purity. On the right, you can see a Coomassie stained gel after a purification of 2 strep-tec proteins with streptectin XT. As you can see here, there is a high yield for both the target proteins, while there are very few unspecific bands in the background. This was achieved in just one purification step. To use these proteins in analysis, no further purification would be necessary. In the direct comparison between the strep-tec and the his-tec, it quickly becomes clear which tag is the more versatile and easy to use tool for protein purification. The strep-tec offers a high yield in just one elution step, which can usually be universally applied to any protein. With the his-tec, the perfect elution conditions have to be tested in a long process. The end product is also highly pure after strep-tec purification, while his-tec purifications often have a high background of contaminating proteins. With the strep-tec, all protein classes can be purified, even the ones that cannot be purified with the his-tec. The buffers can be adjusted in a flexible way for strep-tec, while the his-tec has many limitations. The strep-tec is a universal tool which offers a high purity even without a long-winded optimization process, while the his-tec only offers 80% purity even if the purification is optimized. So before your next protein purification, it might be worth considering the strep-tec as an option before you start. And with this, we're already at the end of our webinar. If you want to learn more about the strep-tec technology, feel free to contact us via email or to visit our website and social media channels, where you can find more information about the strep-tec system and our products.